Good evening, all. Very warm welcome to all of you to the current series of this Nova Journal Club webinar. It has been a very proud and the golden moment for all of us. Nova IVF has achieved 50,000 plus successful IVF pregnancies, which has brought smile and made many couples realizing the dream of parenthood. Nova IVF has set the gold standard of IVF, following all the guidelines as per the ICMR and ART Act, with the most ethical and the transparent practices, and committed to offer safe and healthy pregnancies. So I take this opportunity to thank you all for your trust and the confidence in Nova IVF, which has helped us to reach this milestone. And today's topic for the current series of Journal Club is quality management in the ART program. The moderator and the panelists are the stalwarts in the field of ART and well known nationally and internationally as well. It's my immense pleasure and proud and honor to introduce them as well. Today's event moderator, Dr. Sonia Malik, as we all know. She's been the program director at Nova IVF and Southend, Delhi. And she's one of the pioneers in the field of infertility. And ma'am has got 3 decades of experience in the field of ART, and she has been the president and vice president of many prestigious institutions like Indian Fertility Society, Indian Menopause Society, and South Delhi IMA. And she has been awarded a lifetime achievement by IMA Delhi, ACE, and also IMA Haryana of Afghan Society Wing. And Dr. Sonia has been awarded the Best Doctor Award by the PNDT Cell Delhi as well. And ma'am is being the member of ART Cell in Foxy as well. A warm welcome to you, ma'am. Our panelist, Dr. Manish Banker, Medical Director at Nova IVF Fertility, a world-renowned fertility specialist, has got 3 decades of experience. Sir was conferred the prestigious Dr. B.C. Rai National Award in 2017 by MCI, Most Admired Global Indian Award in 2019, Gujarat Ratna Gaurav Award, and there are many more such awards, sir. Dr. Banker has been the president for ISAR and a member of a draft committee of ART Bill of India, member of International Committee for Monitoring ART as well. And his expertise of establishing and delivering the clinical excellence across the multiple branches in different locations in India is the key for the Nova pregnancy success rate. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
The second panelist, Dr. Rohit Gutugutia, Medical Director of Nova IVF East, a senior fertility specialist there, who have got trained in reproductive medicine in Israel with Professor Ami's team. He has helped to set up and formulate the clinical protocols at different prestigious institutions in Kolkata. At present, he is engaged in nurturing and developing an enabling environment for fellow clinicians and embryologists to provide a best-in-class treatment and assistance to couples seeking conception. He is a member of State IFS and ISAR Committee. Warm welcome to you, sir. And our next panelist, Dr. Lakshmi Chirumamilla, a clinical director of Nova IVF at Hyderabad. Ma'am has got over 2 decades of experience both in India and UK. Published research papers in prestigious journals in India and abroad, like preconceptional evaluation of infertile couples in the Nova IVA textbook of infertility and ART. And Dr. Lakshmi has been the executive member of IMA, Joint Secretary of Obstetric Gynec Society of Hyderabad, Scientific Committee member of ISAR 2020 conference as well. And Dr. Lakshmi has been the award with ISAR Young Talent Award and Dira Foxy Award. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am. The last but not the least, of course, Dr. Sujatha Ramakrishnan, our panelist, who's our head of embryology at Nova IVF. And she has over 26 years of hands-on embryology experience. And she is an American Board of Bioanalysis Certified Embryology Lab Director. And Dr. Sujatha has held the position as a lab director in India and abroad with various prestigious institutions. And Dr. Sujatha is presently a vice president of ACE, that is Academy of Clinical Embryology as well. A very warm welcome to you all, ma'am. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think today's eminent panelist has got over 125 years of experience as a combined experience. And it makes us very apt to listen from them of the today's topic of quality management in ART program. So with this, I hand over to Dr. Sonia ma'am. Please over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Selvam. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and thank you for introducing all of us here.
Yes.
I think it is quite a topical subject, in the changing landscape of the ART scene that is happening in the country. And it is a well-chosen subject. I think we all need to understand what we have to do now as managers, as clinicians who are actually going to be working here in this segment. As I said, we have the landscape which is changing fast, and we really do not know which way to go. And with this new ART Act that has come in, it has actually was expected for a long time, and we have been struggling with the ICMR guidelines all these days, but now we have this very well drafted gazette, which act, in fact, two acts, which are actually going to probably change the scene of ART in the country. It tends to help us regulate ourselves, but I do not know how much we are going to be able to do it. We all are struggling at the moment. And therefore, it is very important for us to understand what is right and what is wrong in practice, because we really do not know what defines a good practice today. We are wondering whether it is competitive pricing which is defining practices, or is it exaggerated, overblown results that are actually causing a problem, or maybe the success rates which are overblown as well. No accountability, no protocols, no set methods. Or is it transparency, honesty, and patient satisfaction that are more important, and also the retention of the patient? Are these the factors? Are these what we should be looking for? Do they define success? So should we be emphasizing on quality management? I think at the end of it, we all know that it is basically the quality which is most important, and we have to emphasize upon managing ourselves in this manner. So what is quality management? We all need to understand it is basically a set of coordinated activities, and these help you to direct and control an organization with continuous improvement and effectiveness and efficiency in its performance. And it includes quality policy, creating and implementing quality planning and assurance, quality control, and quality improvement. So total quality management actually requires all stakeholders in the business to work together. It's not just one part of it, it's everybody together, be it the guard standing outside your practice, or be it the embryologist inside the lab, or be it the clinician. So all of us have to work together to improve processes, products, and services. And we all understand this term ISO 9001, ISO 9000, and we all know that this has been going around for a long time in other organizations, but healthcare took on to quality management a little later, and now we find that many organizations, many health centers and hospitals are actually taking it very seriously, and we have the NABH also, which most of us strive for. So having said that, what we have actually in fertility started talking about a little late in India, but nevertheless, it's never too late, and we need to go on and stress upon it. So what are the components that we should be talking about and thinking about? And that is something that we need to understand. And basically, we can see over here that in our clinics compose of three parts: the managers, the clinicians, and the embryologists. And we have a focus on many, many things, not only our customers, our commitment to employees, and on continuous improvement, and basically all these processes which have to be integrated in order to have a quality care in our systems. So then coming to who are our customers? Is it only the patients who are coming to us? No, it is also the doctors who are using our services, our employees, our suppliers, people in our community whom we are handling and who are coming, who are actually associated, the whole circle around us, and more than anything, the regulatory authorities. That is why I said now the landscape is definitely going to change, because the regulatory authorities are coming down heavily on us. And so we have to be very careful about quality in our centers. So with this preamble, let me just talk about these three papers that have recently come out. The earliest was this Vienna consensus, which most of us here today would know of. And this is basically to describe how to manage a laboratory very carefully with the help of certain performance indicators to help us understand what is right and what is wrong in the lab. And then this Maribor consensus, which came out very recently in 2021, described the same performance indicators for the clinical practice as well, especially in ART. So now we have a clinical performance indicators and the laboratory performance indicators. But are these sufficient to assess the clinical management in these cycles? Is it enough? Is what this question is, this paper in fertility sterility asks very pertinently. So therefore, let us just see what entails management of ART quality management of ART centers in our country. How do we look at it? And with that, let me just start the first question to one of my panelists. And let me start with the clinicians first. How is TQM practiced among clinicians, and how would you judge the performance of these clinicians? Now, suppose you have hired two. You have hired two, they have the same kind of CV, they have the same kind of experience. And so, how are you going to know whether this one is better than that one? What are the benchmarks that you have created for yourself, Dr. Rohit? I would like to ask you, as a clinician in one of our prestigious centers in the east of India, in Calcutta, and etc. Would you be able to tell us what you are doing in order to understand the performance of your clinicians? Dr. Rohit?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Dr. Sonia. When we started, obviously, there was this doubt that are we talking about a clinical subject today or about management? So the context has been very nicely said by you that in today's scenario, the clinician is also a manager, or in fact, we have always been a people's manager, and now we have to be product or a process manager as well. I'd like to give one story before I take on this question, and that story is from 2012, which is when NOAA was taking its baby steps. And that's when Dr. Banker actually sensitized all of us to the concept of implantation rate as opposed to clinical pregnancy rates. So that's how the story of quality goes in maybe NOAA, the way we practice at NOAA, that he was very clear that instead of really looking at the clinical rates and so on and so forth, we should look at the per embryo implantation rate. And that's how you define whether you're doing your processes correctly or not. So we all understand that in IVF, success is the operative word. People select centers, doctors, or whatever basis on the success rates per se, but sometimes success is not achieved in the right way, and success needs to be practiced more as a way of life rather than anything else, and that can only come through TQM or total quality management. You've defined it eloquently for all of us what TQM is all about. I have taken a definition very simply from the Wikipedia, and which says that it consists of organization-wide efforts. So it's not only the clinician, it is the front office, the embryologist, the darwan, as you said, the gatekeeper right at the very level, to install and make permanent climate where employees continuously improve their ability to provide on-demand products and services that the customers would appreciate. So that's where we are coming from TQM. Now, how do we apply TQM in healthcare? So healthcare it's not unique, but it is special. Healthcare has its own concerns. People want immediate care. People do not follow rules as such. You will stand in a queue in a bank, but here you would have emergency services and other things as well. And IVF in itself is very, very peculiar. In IVF, people are very demanding. They do not suffer from any diseases. They have all the time in the world. They'll read up everything. They are aware of all the latest technologies, all the latest facts and figures, and they're highly motivated. They would travel across cities if they want to get their IVF cycles done. And for them, of course, success remains a very big parameter. They ask around, they read on the internet, they ask their friends and relatives, they ask their referring clinicians also. They kind of cross-refer with a lot of other people before they make a decision. And again, their expectations are also kind of unrealistic because it's mostly out of pocket in our country. So in our sense, TQM is a practice that's new, but that's going to stay. And that's something that we have to inculcate as we go forward. Now, to answer your question, how do we as NOAA take in TQM in our practice, or how do we judge our clinicians? So because now it's an evolved practice, IVF all across the world has been there for 40 years. It's an evolved practice. So now mostly the KPIs are all in place. So the standard operating procedures as they can be defined are all in place. You have set protocols for most of the patients, most of the procedures. You have SOPs that have been defined, and we do have a SOP booklet at NOAA, which is updated quite regularly, and we have it for last 10 years or so. We are committed to providing information to our patients at the right time and at the right juncture. And of course, we tell them about the risks as well and the consenting.
Let's talk about the clinician, doctor, because we talk about the patients a little later. I have Lakshmi waiting there.
Absolutely.
For the
Absolutely.
next question. So let's
Absolutely.
talk about the clinician. How are you going to judge whether your clinicians are doing the right thing or not?
Yeah, so similarly, just as we have the practice SOPs, we have the KPIs for the clinicians as well. So we generally see what we have understood from the practice of IVF is the important or the overarching clinical pregnancy rates and also the multiple pregnancy rates. We need to have as low multiple pregnancy rates as possible. But even before that, right from the starting to the stimulation, as to how many cycles are getting cancelled or the cycle cancellation rate. If there are complications, if they are, how many of them are going into complications, whether it is OHSS or whether it's any other bleeding or any other complication, what's the percentage? Then after pickup, we try and find out how many of the oocytes that were retrieved were mature and they had good enlarged cumulus. We also try and understand everything else. And then we judge these patients according to a benchmark that has already been preset in our practice. And based on that, not only on the clinical pregnancy rate or number of patients seen, but based on all of these, we then try and scale our doctors, not with a view to criticize them, but to try and tell them that this is where they are lacking or they're missing out and they should upgrade themselves.
Yeah, so basically, let me just poke you a little.
Sure.
You have these two doctors, and one of them is excellent. You're getting very good M2 oocytes from her, and the embryos are perfect. But she is actually stimulating hard, and you are getting an OHSS, moderate or severe OHSS, maybe every 2 months. So, and the other one is a little more scared of doing overzealous work. You're getting less number of M2s, less number of oocytes, but her pregnancy rate for both of them is similar. Now, which one would you prefer in your practice? The one who's very daring and causes a lot of OHSS, or the one who is basically a little more cautious? Whom are you going to keep with you?
So as we know, as KPIs goes, we would like to avoid, it will be safety first. So we'd like to avoid complications at all costs. Having said that, we can sit down with both the clinicians and try and understand what is good in each of them and try and inculcate in the practice.
So that's an answer like a very good manager clinician. Thank you, doctor. Thank you for that. So these of course are helping you. Now you've been talking a lot about the customer satisfaction in our program, and you have the patients, we have the doctors, we have the employees. Now, Lakshmi, you've been waiting to answer this, itching, I think, also to answer, because as a manager, as a clinic in charge, and as a clinician yourself, it's a big problem for you. Why is it important to ensure the satisfaction of all these groups of people? Why do you think, in addition to the customers or the patients, we need to also satisfy the whims and fancies of our employees?
As we have been talking, ma'am, customer satisfaction is very crucial for our patients to continue their treatment. Most of the times, the failure happens to a couple mainly because they discontinue the treatment. It's not because they are not successful in their process, but because they get dissatisfied and they discontinue. And there are studies which showed us that psychological support is very necessary for these patients, and wherever they lack that, or wherever there is deficiency in the processes, that makes them unhappy and they stop their treatment process. So for them to achieve their stipulated goal, that is having a baby and a family, they should be satisfied. That's the only way they could achieve their goal. So to have a satisfied patient or a couple, other stakeholders are also important. For example, our employees, only a positive employee, a happy employee can inculcate that happiness and positivity in the patient.
Yes.
If not, if they're not happy, then definitely that negativity will be spread across in the clinic. Interpersonal relationship will be affected, and also patient to staff relationship will also be affected. So it's not only the satisfaction of the patients, I would say it is at all levels, starting from the staff, nurses, doctors, embryologists. Everyone should be satisfied and comfortable in their workplace so that we can deliver the best service. And satisfaction is not only one area that we can achieve only through success of the pregnancy, but it should be the feeling of the patient that, you know, the service they got is good quality, whether they have achieved the pregnancy or did not achieve pregnancy. You know, if we are able to give them the best service, you know, they will be happy to continue with us, and finally we will be able to help them achieve their goal. So I would say that is customer satisfaction is important.
So here on this slide, we are saying that the government has, the ART bill has asked all of us to have this grievance cell. Although it is not outlined very well as to what is going to be the structure of this cell, but nevertheless the act says that every clinic must, or every center must have, ART center must have it. And so do you think it is going to be a great relieving factor, or is it going to be something that is going to stress you as the consultant or as the person who is dealing with these patients? Do you think you're a little upset about this, or do you think this is a good thing to happen as far as your practice is concerned?
Leave alone fertility center, ma'am, wherever we go, wherever we want to take services from, be it a railway station or an airport, if you happen to see the grievance cell, you feel comfortable, okay, wherever I go, I can complain or get my things in the right direction. So the same happiness or satisfaction would be achieved by our patients also if they know where to approach if something goes wrong, by God forbid.
Okay.
Grievance cell is one of those. And so because of the requirement by the ART guidelines, I think all of our clinics have a grievance cell with a board in front of it, and the manager is going to be heading the grievance cell. And by taking these grievance points from the customers and patients, we can take a feedback from them. We can identify where the problem is and correct them so that in the future we wouldn't do the same problem. So we shouldn't be worried about it. So we should take it in a positive way so that we can correct our mistakes and move forward. And as a policy of risk assessment or risk management also, what it says is it shouldn't be pinpointing at one person and scrutinizing that one person. It should be a system approach, not the individual approach. So yes, if we can follow that in the grievance cell, then definitely we'll have a lot of positivities coming.
So here, so basically, thank you very much for that very positive approach towards this grievance cell. And it is actually something which is heartening, because basically, I think all NOVA centers and clinicians are not upset with this, because we are already trying to achieve or ensure customer satisfaction. We are already doing it. So it does not really happen. It doesn't seem to be bothering us at all. And basically, is this also a part of the TQM? It is, isn't it? And
yeah,
basically, you were talking about the assessment tools. How do you go about assessing whether your customer is satisfied or not? How do you know that? What do you do for that?
So in our clinics, we have been following the customer feedback forms. We also take feedback from our referral doctors. And also we look at our statistics in terms of first consultation dropout rates of the patients, because only satisfied patients will continue with us. So these are the various parameters we look at. And we also have an app for the referral doctors, which through which also we can get the data regarding their satisfaction and the way their patients have been treated. And all these help us to get the quality of our care that we are providing to our patients. And finally, our Google reviews also give us, you know, whenever a patient is unhappy or has to wait a little bit, you know, definitely they will go and put it on the Google. So these are some areas where we look at.
Yeah. So actually, I think we are not that concerned or bothered about all this because we are already doing all this, and we know that our patients, I mean, in majority, either we are able to retain them and the others go back happy even if they don't succeed. That has been the principle of NOVA. And let me get to Dr. Manish Banker for this one little comment from him and ask him, what do you think? Are we able to meet the expectations of our patients across in all the centers? Do you think all our patients, all are not patients, I would say, all the customers as TQM describes them, are they happy? Do you think our employees are happy?
I think there is a very famous mantra in marketing or in corporate that, I mean, to satisfy your external customer, you need to satisfy your internal customer first. And on both the aspects, internal and external, there is no saturation. It's always an uphill task. No matter how good you are, you should always strive to be better. The expectations will always keep on increasing. You try to plug one hole and there'll be another leak which will develop. This does not mean that we are bad, but this is an ongoing process. So that is all about total quality management, continuous improvement, that you need to learn and keep on improving. That is something which is a lifelong process.
So yes,
we cannot allow complacency to set in at any point of time.
Uncompromising ethics, is that how you describe yourself, Dr. Banker? I think all of us are basically severely ethical in our practices, and that includes Sujatha as well in the lab. All of us just cannot compromise on ethics, and basically keeping the patient in mind, we are trying to fit in as much of ethical practice as we can without compromising on anything across. So what do the regulatory bodies want us to do, Lakshmi? What do they want us to do? Is this something extraordinary that they want us to do according to this new act, or is it something that we are already doing? Barring the grievance cell, which of course we have our own, but maybe we have to use it, make it the way they want us to do. That may be the only difference. But otherwise, do you think we are doing everything the way they want us to?
I think NOVA has started this well back in 2011 or whenever we have started in 2010. We have started the practices at world-class standards, both in terms of embryology, clinical, and also at the level of the staff. We look at them as very important in our day-to-day practices. So the most important thing regarding NOVA is it's not only the embryology lab we look at, but we also look at the psychological support to the patient, which is very important, which was lacking in most of the centers. But we used to have psychological counselors in our centers right from the beginning of starting of NOVA centers. So I would say proudly that that is one of the KPIs that NOVA has, and that helps our patients to continue their treatments, that helps our retention patients to achieve their goals. Mm-hmm. And we also used to strictly, we also have this system of double witnessing, which I know Dr. Sujatha will talk later on. And there are so many other things which we have been following since the inception, which became a law and a standard now. I don't think we have to change significantly in any way because the law has come.
So I think now Rohit and you can both vouch for it. These three papers that we were talking about, we are doing way beyond what has been written in that. They are just talking about the clinical KPIs and the embryology KPIs, which of course Sujatha will talk about just now. But as such, in the quality management of a center, why we have been talking about NOVA here is because we are already doing what is required, and hence the idea is to basically tell who all, we are very happy to have lots of people attending this webinar, but we want to convey to them that it is very important to have quality if you want success. And that is what we are trying to say today, because basically we as NOVA are managing everything the way it should be worldwide. That is why we very proudly say. And something which has not been mentioned, and I think it is Dr. Manish Banker's favorite, is data. Something which he is very, very sticky about, and we all are very proud of, is his yen for having correct data. And I think he will talk about it elaborately when we talk to him for the final comments. But yes, that is another very important thing that we need to do when we are talking about total quality management. And let me just now talk to the embryology director, Dr. Sujatha. We are talking about efficiency, safety, and how have you been able to achieve these standards in your labs? There are so many of them, and what are your components for lab quality? What are your KPIs? What are your benchmarks?
So thank you very much, ma'am. So when we are talking about quality in an IVF lab, it is nothing but, in simple terms, you can just say the scientific way of doing things. There could be a lot of definitions for quality control, quality assurance, and all these components. But to understand it better, it is just that, like, how do we do things in a very scientific way? The second thing is, how do we conform to specifications? Now, an embryology laboratory, as we all know, is kind of core to an infertility practice. And when we are talking about the laboratory, it is just not the equipment, everything, the manpower, the ambience, all of them actually contribute to the success. Now, first and the foremost thing, what we insist on is to write down everything, whatever happens in the lab, in the form of an SOP, a standard operating procedure. And here I have to say, there are a lot of factors which actually can differentiate between a good SOP and a not so good SOP. Because many a times we have seen that, like, what is written as a manual is considered as an SOP, which is different. An SOP actually should have the entire process, which is being done in an IVF laboratory, mapped right from the time the egg is coming inside and right to the time the embryos are put back into the uterus or into the liquid nitrogen tank. Now, it's just not enough only to define these processes, but we also have to say what could actually go wrong. With the experience of people in the team, we have to write down what are the problems which can happen at each step and what is the possible solution. So you should have this Bible in the laboratory, which we have. So, and the second thing is, we insist our team that they should follow the SOP to the T. I understand that we are talking about biological material, and many a times there might be reasons to deviate from what is written in the SOP, but then there should be a proper justification for that. It's not that, like, according to one's whims and fancies, you just deviate from SOP. So for your question, ma'am, first, we do have a very well-written SOP. Second thing, we insist and we also follow that, people are following this SOP. Now, second thing is, we document everything which happens in the lab. The quality, the number, and this documentation is not something which is manipulated. It is a real-time data entry which happens. And then there are mechanisms to kind of check whether this is done in a very routine and in a honest way. Now, okay, you document so many things. We'll know that there are around 200 to 300 factors which could be involved in the IVF laboratory. You cannot monitor all of them. It is just practically impossible to monitor all of them. Now, taking cue from the literature and from the experience, we identify certain core factors as our, key performance indicators. And then you have a competency value, you have a benchmark value. Here again, I would say in our laboratories, we monitor the fertilization rate, the degeneration rate, because that is directly got to do something, like a majority of that is depending upon the embryologist technique. And the third thing is the fertilization rate. Fourth is blastocyst formation rate. That is, it's just not blastocyst formation. What is the usable blastulation rate? So all these things we monitor, and we monitor on a weekly basis. We also monitor on a monthly basis, and we get these kind.
Yeah. In other words, what you are trying to tell us is something that is taught in class 8 or 9 in the schools, something called factual writing, where they are asked to make a cup of tea. So if you start making a tea, you put a kettle on the fire and you have not lit the fire, you are wrong. So therefore, what you are trying to tell us is that the SOPs have to be so factual and correct that we cannot go wrong at any step. And then, of course, you have indicators to tell you whether the tea is going to be strong or light, right? Carry on,
Yes.
Sujatha, carry on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it's not enough that you make it, but then you also have to analyze it.
Yes.
Because, we collect a lot of data and there is no point just keeping them like that. We have to analyze and see and take action whenever we feel that there is a necessary, because it is also not right to kind of have a knee-jerk reaction and change things. When there is an issue, you have to wait, watch, there is a particular time. After that, you have to actually take action. But in some cases, we need to take proactive measures. So all these things, ma'am, I think it helps us to kind of keep the quality in an embryology lab under control.
And how do you manage technological advances? How do these strengthen your TQM? Suppose you find something new happening in the world and you're adopting it. Are you ready to adapt to it, or how do you introduce it in your labs without disturbing your quality?
So actually there are tools which are coming in, say for example, like the one which I would like to talk about is the electronic witnessing system. So one of the major issues which actually can happen in an IVF lab is, mixing up of samples. Because see, whenever you are seeing a patient, you have a face, you have a name, and you remember that. But that is not the same with the egg or the sperm, because all of them, they look the same. So definitely it is important that, great attention has to be paid to avoid mixing up of samples. So this technology basically is introduced for that purpose. So what happens is, like, patients are given certain cards, and this, it is read at every single step. Now, so it helps us to avoid mismatches, but it also helps us to kind of evaluate the process, because every single step is kind of recorded there. It tells us. So, if we are just sitting in one place and if you're trying to monitor the quality in the labs, this definitely helps us, because, at the end of the day, it tells us how many procedures happened, what time a particular procedure was performed, who was the person who did it, was there any mismatch, did they bring in a wrong dish? So it helps us in so many ways. So this is how, technology, though it is meant for a particular purpose, but we also have to see whether in any other way it can contribute to the quality in the lab.
So basically, this is, with what you're telling us, Sujatha, I really wonder what happened when they produced that film, Good News. Why did the lab, that means it must have been a very, very casual lab where they had that kind of a mix-up. If you're very careful about quality assurance, and if you're very careful about your methodology, I don't think such things would happen. And I'm sure it never happens in our labs. So then, is it mandatory to have a trained embryologist, therefore, in your, as per the rules now that have come up? Do you agree with them? Is it very important for all of us to have training, a trained laboratory person? I think it is.
Yes, absolutely, ma'am, because, an embryologist is kind of, the axle of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I would like to put it, there are two parts. One is art and another one is science.
Mm-hmm.
Art is their hands-on skills, the way they perform their ICSIs, the way they perform their biopsies, and, loading and all that. Science is the knowledge, and you also have other components such as analytical skills, their ability to withstand pressure, stress, and time management, all these things. Now, it is very important that, either you have a trained embryologist, or you take someone and then train them in your SOPs. Because, in this, at least by the ART law, it has given us some clarity on the qualification. It says certain qualification actually can be, employed as an embryologist. But there is no clarity on the experience part of it.
Mm-hmm.
They say a person should have 1 year of experience, but if the person is worked in a lab where they were just doing 2 to 3 pickups in a month, would that be enough? Yes. There is no, they have not mentioned about the number of cycles or anything like that. So there is no clarity. But at least what we do in Nova is, one, we mostly hire people who have their MSc in clinical embryology. So at least, they have worked in or at least they have undergone training in clinical embryology for 2 years. So the theory part should be okay. But most of them would not have had opportunity to work with human gametes. So that part of the training is given to them in our labs. Usually they are taken as interns. For first 6 months, we have an academy where our SOP is taught to them. And, we it's like a preparatory course. We prepare them to what to expect in a NOVA lab. And after 6 months, we just post them in our labs, mostly labs which have very high volume, because, that is where you can get them trained. And then again, it doesn't mean that like you put them there and leave them like that. There is a very strict and stringent validation protocol where they have to perform procedures along with the senior embryologists and the senior people in the team there. And then they have certain benchmarks, and only when they achieve that, they are eligible to work independently. It's just not only the skills, but their overall attributes. All of them are assessed, and then they are allowed to work as embryologists, because it is definitely not okay to practice on patients' gametes and get a person trained. So we have kept that in mind, and we have designed the program in such a way that the people would get trained without compromising on our results.
Thank you, Sujatha. And the last question for you. Do you see batching now in this new scenario with the coming of the ART? Will we be able to maintain the standards, and especially when there are hardly any in-house embryologists in these labs where they are doing batching? Do you think it is a very good idea to continue doing that?
First of all, to do batch IVF, the most critical thing is you should have enough equipment. Okay, suppose if you're just planning to do some 15-20 pickups in 2-3 days, then you should have enough incubators, you should have enough workstations, and there also should be manpower, because if somebody is doing pickups from morning, say, and if it is just in one theater they are doing it, the first pickup would start at 9, and then the 7th or 8th pickup would end by 1 or 2. And then all the time the workspace is occupied by this pickup. Now, ICSI would get delayed, other procedures would get delayed. So you will not be able to maintain the time, because in IVF, it's very, very important that at a certain time, you need to denude the cells. At a certain time, you have to perform ICSI, you have to do vitrification thawing, everything. There is actually a time range. And you get good results only when you do it in that time range. So if you do not have equipment, if you do not have people, if it is just one freelance embryologist who's visiting your center and then doing everything, it's definitely going to affect the quality. So I feel that if you're very well equipped with a lot of incubators, micromanipulators and workstations, then it shouldn't be a problem. But in my opinion, I would say there should always be an in-house embryologist, because it's just not you work on the day of the procedure. You have to work all the days to maintain the quality of the lab, to maintain the equipment. So definitely there should be a person there. But law does not mention anything about batch IVF, nor do they mention anything about the number of equipments in with relevance to procedures.
Okay. So basically, yes, it is definitely going to compromise the quality, and we don't agree with it, right? So I am now coming to our director, and basically I wish to ask you, Dr. Banker, what is success in IVF? Is it biochemical pregnancy according to you, appearance of the G-sac, or is it appearance of fetal heart that we are looking at? How does the world report success, and what are we doing? The last words from you.
When we talk about a rate, there will be a numerator and a denominator. So numerator is what we have achieved, and denominator is the population or the larger number of people who are trying to achieve this. And if we look at it from a patient's perspective, why does a patient approach us? Does the patient approach us for having an embryo transfer? No. Does she come to us to have a positive beta HCG? No. Does she come to us to have a gestational sex seen on an ultrasound? No. I think the patient comes with only one purpose, that is to have a healthy child. And in the current scenario where we know that multiple pregnancies are putting the patient at a higher risk, the outcomes neonatal and maternal are not good, they are coming to us for having a healthy singleton child. So the numerator has to be singleton healthy live birth. Neither a positive pregnancy test, nor a gestational sac, nor a fetal heartbeat. Now, the denominator has to be every patient who starts a treatment, because the moment you start eliminating patients, you will have a higher and higher, a falsely higher pregnancy rate. So if I say that I want to look at live birth rate per embryo transfer, I will be excluding all the patients who did not have a pickup, who did not have an embryo formed, and you will have a falsely high pregnancy rate. So keeping this in mind, most organizations are looking at only one parameter, and that is the cumulative live birth rate arising from one stimulated cycle. So any patient who starts a cycle should be counted as the denominator, and the delivery of a single healthy child is the numerator. So how many healthy children you are able to get from one stimulated cycle. So if one attempt fails, you take the frozen embryo from that cycle and you keep on adding up. And the logic behind this is that it is the ovarian stimulation and the pickup which is the riskiest part of the entire procedure, and we should try to minimize that. Secondly, when you're looking at cumulative, you would be looking at the efficiency of your cryo program as well. So it will give a better overall view of what that center is able to achieve. So the entire world, whether it is the HFEA, whether it is ESHRE, whether it is SART, or as a part of ICMAT when we publish the world reports, it is always cumulative live birth rate per stimulated cycle. But this is a very interesting paper which has come around, which looks at a much more holistic view. It is not only a success that we need to look at. We need to also look at adverse events. The success cannot come at the cost of a complication. We also need to look at how much time does it take. If your implantation rates are poor and it takes you 3 cycles to achieve the same pregnancy rate versus 1 cycle for one clinic, for the patient, it is time. We should also look at cost effectiveness. I'm not telling only about the cost, but what you're getting in return. How many patients continue with the treatment? How many drop out? Patient satisfaction. So this is a slightly complex issue, but essentially cumulative live delivery rate per intention to treat couple, looking at this whole parameter, because higher the dropout, lower will be your cumulative rate. You want patients to stay with you. You want them to be happy. You want them to be having less stress. So this is a much more holistic view on looking at it, rather than telling simply that my pregnancy rate is 70%, which does not mean anything.
So that is what we have been talking about all this while. We are talking about all these points one by one and trying to understand how beautifully. And in your this thing, according to you, what would you consider as key performance indicators, Dr. Banker? What, according to you, entail performance in the larger sense as well as in NOVA?
So can you move to the full slide, please?
Yeah, I'm going to it one by one.
Yeah. So basically, this is a key performance indicator is a kind of a tool which gives you information about any kind of work which you do repeatedly. So are you doing it well? Is it remaining constant? Are people doing it well? And if it is not happening properly, it sends out a warning that there is a problem. So all businesses organization, be it medical or even a factory or a car manufacturer, would have certain KPIs. And it could be as simple as pregnancies per month, or maybe units produced per month, how many people have worked, how much revenue you have produced. So you can choose what you want to monitor, what is important for you, and how do you use this data. If we move to the next slide, so from an IVF perspective, there are numerous parameters that we need to look at, and this could be business related, clinical, or embryology. And from a holistic perspective, we need to monitor everything. I mean, how many new patients are coming to us? How many procedures are we doing? what is the revenue for that procedure? How many patients are satisfied and they come back to you? From a clinical, right from the pregnancy rate to abortion to cancellation to multiple to eventually the live birth. And in the embryology, from the fertilization, regeneration, blastulation to the implantation. So we need to have a holistic picture on what is happening in the clinic, because you could have the best pregnancy rate, but if you're not getting any new patients, what does it matter? So we need to look at everything. Or you might be having the best pregnancy rates, but your clinic is running at a loss. Does it help you? So, I mean, it's a much more holistic view on what is happening in the clinic, and each of this KPI is as important as the other. Now, when we move to larger clinics, maybe where there are multiple clinics happening, there this becomes still all the more important, because how do you tend
relevance to larger practices?
So how do you achieve this KPIs? So to achieve KPIs, you need to give them some standard procedures, operating procedures that you need to follow step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you want to achieve this. But by restricting them to follow these SOPs, there is a view that you are depriving me of my freedom to individualize treatment. I'm not a robot that I need to follow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 only. So we need to come at some sort of a compromise based on the patient profile, because patient is the largest variable in this. Every patient does not require the same treatment. We all know. So we need to follow this Venn diagram and see where there is an overlap, where the SOP needs to be followed strictly, and where you need some deviation. Otherwise, you will end up, I mean, we are not robots. We are ultimately thinking clinicians. Even the embryologists have to be thinking embryologists. They're not mechanics just doing a mechanical procedure. Every ICSI is the same, but every ICSI is also different. That is what we need to understand. So it's a kind of a compromise between strict following to what needs to be, individualized. And this begins with what is your vision or strategy? What do you aim to achieve? This is what will define what you are aiming at, because your vision or your strategy is going to tell you what kind of KPIs you should follow. And on the basis of your vision, you then define your strategies. And to define those strategic objectives, you define your goals. For example, if you want to increase patient satisfaction, you need to have satisfaction at the front desk. You need to have higher pregnancy rate. You need to have lower complication rate. Unless you achieve these three, you will not achieve a satisfaction. So for each strategic objective that you define, you need to go lower and lower and define what you need to do to achieve this. And this is what is relevant when you're working not only in large clinics, but even for your own clinic. I mean, just one looking at pregnancy rate does not help you in anything. So probably it's a more wider spectrum rather than being focused only on pregnancy rate, and pregnancy rate.
So how it is not easy to maintain data. Like I was mentioning earlier, you have a yen for data, but yes, it's not easy to maintain that data. Can you tell us how this is going to help you resolve problems? Why do we need so much data? How does it help us?
I think data, because in the absence of data, you are basically a blind person. You will be taking decisions based on instincts. You will take a decision based on what happened in your last patient, and you will start going here and there. So next, so keeping this in mind, let us see how do we define, and this is the commonest problem. Pregnancy rate has dropped, you blame the lab. This is the first thing. Every clinician has done this. I'm sorry, but this comes naturally to every clinician.
True.
But if you monitor your KPI and if you find that you are giving them lesser mature eggs, obviously their pregnancy rates are going to fall. So unless you look at KPIs, you will not choose the right corrective measure to solve your problem, and you will enter into the field of blame game. I'll give you another example to this. You want to start a new regimen to see whether the stimulation protocol is helping you or not. Unless you are looking for mature oocytes or immature oocytes, you will not know whether that stimulation protocol is working or not. Secondly, if you're using a stronger protocol which is going to produce more oocytes, you need to have extra incubators in your lab before you do this. Otherwise, you will have a problem in your lab. You'll be giving them 20 extra eggs every day, and your lab is not capable of handling them. So this is where you need to find out what you want to achieve, what are the likely outcomes, and you work backwards before you start putting into place. And this you can only address by looking at your data, because your data will tell where you stand and what you need to achieve. The third and the most classical example which I give is what we talked about, KPIs and benchmarks. Let's say the Vienna consensus tells us that the FERT rate benchmark is 75%. And you tell your embryologist, I want to cross 75%. But your historical data is 60%. You cannot achieve that. You need to have your internal benchmark data before you give them something which is unachievable. And this is where your data will tell you that if you are at 60, you cannot be at 75 tomorrow. You need to have a realistic goal of 65, then you go to 70, and then you go to 75. You need to train them. Where is the problem? So this is where the whole issue should be started. And this becomes more complex when there are multiple clinics, because there are so many variables now. You have different patients, different people, and typically you need to monitor it on a dashboard, which will tell us how each clinic fares. Red, green, yellow. This is a kind of a traffic light system, whether each clinic is above, below, or at par with the benchmark. And this gives you a snapshot on whether there is a problem or not. And if the problem is at a particular clinic, how do you go at tackling this? You could also go at a minute level. And next, where you can look at, if you go to the next, when you can evaluate performances of individual embryologists, because you could have 4 embryologists working in a clinic. If the FERT rate is bad, maybe only one of them is having the problem. The other 3 might be having fantastic FERT rate. So unless you monitor them per embryologist, you will again not be able to find out where your problem is, and you will never achieve what you want. So you need, and again for this, you need real-time, accurate data. You need to be honest, and the data has to be real-time. Then you can identify the problem and go about correcting it. This is not a fact-finding mission, it is an improvement mission.
Yes, that is a wonderful message that you have given. It is not a fault-finding mission. It is to improve yourself. So that is exactly what quality management tells us. It is just to help us to improve and improve all the time. It just tells you not to stop at what you are doing and keep on improving yourself. Self-improvement and improvement of others along with you, right? And should this question for you as well, I could also say, should training of clinicians be a part of the whole program? And is it a statutory requirement now for us as well?
I think statutory requirement is only the clinical training. I think they have not talked about the other requirement. But at the same time, the Act does mention the role of a clinic director. I would assume that it is the director who has to play this role, because
Yes.
he is now wearing multiple hats. He may be a clinician, but he, in the role of the director, is slightly different from a pure clinician, because then everything falls under him. So yes and no, there is a kind of indirect statutory requirement, but I fully agree, not only the clinician and the embryologist, every person in the clinic should be taught this. Because your weakest link is how weak you are. I mean, you may be the best, and maybe one weak link is going to decide how good you are.
So this is what Sujatha was mentioning about how we go on doing it. Do you think that this kind of a thing needs to be done even for the clinicians and for others as well in NOVA, or in any other clinic who's talking about quality management? I can ask this question to both my clinicians. Do you think this would help you in your clinical work if we have any kind of training like this, for maybe an upskilling of our doctors who are already with us? Rohit?
It makes sense. It makes sense. So if we are doing it in an unorganized way, in the sense that we have observers who come in and then they join us on a full-time basis, but something which is structured like the embryology team has been able to do it, would definitely make sense.
What about you, Lakshmi? Do you think we should be having this of our existing clinicians?
I mean, whenever we recruit our clinicians, I think this thing is taken into consideration before they are on board and start working with us.
Yes.
So existing clinicians, I would say they are full-fledged trained clinicians. I don't think we need anything beyond that. But if there is any problem that we have identified in our clinicians who are existing, definitely then we have to retrain them so that, they will be better off dealing with the patients rather than putting them at risk.
Yeah,
But
basically,
our fellowship programs.
you mentioned psychological handling. Don't you think the clinician also needs to learn bedside manners much better now with so much of problem happening every day in the clinics? Do you think we need to upskill them on that?
We as clinicians are also psychologists. We do counseling to a little extent, but we won't be able to be a psychologist and be by the side of the patient always. That's what I feel. But the bonding between a psychologist and the patient is definitely a different ballgame when compared to us as a clinician. They will be able to develop that attachment, and in the Nova way, what they do is at every step they are there for them. Right from advising IVF, start of stimulation, during the pickup, during the injection process, and even on the day of embryo transfer, even up to the beta HCG negative or positive. If it happens to be negative, then they are there to support them through the emotional turmoil and guiding them to come back to the clinic to get the better pregnancy rate in the next cycle. So, we won't be able to do this.
Yeah, we won't be able to. Dr. Banker, what do you think would be lacking, and what do you think in your own opinion, as far as the regulatory bodies are concerned, like you said, they've only specified certain things, but do you think we need much more for that in order to make the whole process better?
I think there are two skills which I feel are very important. One is communication, because today it is very absolutely key in communication to all our customers, whether it is the patient, whether it is a referring doctor, whether it is a vendor. This is extremely crucial. This skill is extremely crucial. And second is marketing, and I don't mean marketing means advertising, but at least giving to the public what you are and what you stand for. I think these are two skills which today every budding medical practitioner needs.
Yeah, that is true, because if you want to save yourself from the onslaught of the patients, then you need to be a very good marketing person, a salesman, to be able to sell yourself properly. Like you said, ethically and according to what we are doing, but of course we have to have those marketing skills, and communication should be very good. So what about your SOPs, Dr. Banker? You think this, of course, you have explained, but do you think we are adequate, or should we be doing more than this? Or do you think we are very happy with the kind of operating procedures that we have set for ourselves?
I think these are essentially documents which tell us what needs to be done, when it should be done, how it should be done, and who will do it. That these are the simple 4 parts of an SOP, and they will always keep on evolving. You will need to modify what you have. You will need to add what you have. So this is again an ongoing process which we need to keep on reviewing and updating, because no matter what SOPs you add, once we have the act, we'll have to revisit all the SOPs based on the act. Tomorrow we have something else, we'll have to revisit those. So this is an ongoing, continuous learning process, and we need to keep on following this.
So I think we have all these operating procedures, as you rightly mentioned, on the operations, on the embryology, and on the clinical part. And the idea is basically the mantra, as I would say, would be to unify all the processes and the personnel that we have across the centers, and so that whatever happens in one is happening in the other as well. So that we know that, and I think we should have mentioned also that when we are operating through multiple centers and we want to achieve the same kind of standards, we need to have some kind of a software to help us, document everything in one, in our software, so that we can access it from anywhere in any of the Nova centers. That is what we have. Maybe all the chains across the world are doing the same thing, that you can access data from anywhere. So that actually unifies everything and makes us sitting in one place. We can access what Lakshmi is doing and what Rohit is doing. And basically that is how we all are together yet separate. We work in our own little cells, but yet we are a part of the whole body. So that's what it is. And would anybody want to say something before we close? Anybody out? Where is Sujatha? I don't think she's here. But anyone, Lakshmi, would you like to say something? I will ask Dr. Banker to give his final remarks a little later. Anyone else wants to say something? Closing. So, Dr. Banker, how would you like to sum this up?
I think what is most important in the field of IVF is basically transparency, because this is a field where no one can assure 100% success. This is the only field of medicine where even a 30% failure is accepted. Imagine in a bypass, if the patient comes to you and the surgeon tells that there is a 30% chance that the surgery will fail, who will get operated with you? So this is one area where the success rates will never be even close to 100%. And this is where your transparency would matter. You need to do what you tell, and you need to tell what you do. This is how I put it. Only this will make the patient satisfied that we have tried our best. We have been honest. We are not playing God here. And if the patient is satisfied with this, she will remain with you. She will come for more and more attempts. And higher the number of attempts she has, higher is the chance she has of taking home a healthy child. This is what I believe is the key to having a successful IVF practice.
Sujatha, as the lab director, would you like to give a concluding suggestion to anyone, to all of us, barring the fact that it's not always the lab that is at fault?
To maintain quality in the lab, like it is very important that everything, every small aspect is paid attention to, because there is nothing like this is very important and something is not important. Even when you're talking about embryologists, I would prefer to have an embryologist who actually makes the dishes properly than one who is in a perfect ICSI technician, because when you do not make a dish well, even if Bob Edwards comes and does ICSI, you will not get pregnancy. So I think every single aspect has to be paid attention to, and that is the key to a quality practice.
Thank you, doctor. So my two friends who are like me.
Dr. Malik,
Rohit, you are sorry, yes?
Dr. Malik, there are a couple of questions you may want to take up.
Yeah, sorry, let me take that. So I'll probably stop sharing my screen with this concluding slide, which of course tells us what we have been talking about. And then a big thank you to all of you who have been such great panelists today. Thank you, Dr. Banker. Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Lakshmi. And thank you, Sujatha. And of course, Dr. and Mr. Selvan, thank you so much for having us here. Let me just stop sharing my slide and take the questions now. This is from Jitendra Chadda, who says, when should one take a feedback, during IVF or after the embryo transfer? I think, Lakshmi, you were talking about patients' satisfaction, etc., etc. So maybe you can answer this one.
At one point of time, we were taking feedbacks at every visit of the patient, starting with the first consultation, because the more we do, the more we know about our faults, and we can correct ourselves. So it should be at the first visit, during stimulation, and also at the end of embryo transfer, so that we know the journey, what they have faced, what they have gone through, and how we improve our process.
So is online, Rohit, maybe you could take this one, is online counseling okay for quality counseling in tier 2 cities? Online counseling.
Of course, the whole act of the doctor-patient thing is touch and feel as well. And we realized during COVID that it's not always possible to do everything right online. But in case we're talking about a paucity of trained counselors, so in that case, any counseling is better than no counseling. And if we have trained counselors who are available online, they can be a good substitute.
And thank you, Rohit. And Sujatha, there's something for you. In fact, there are two questions. One is, I do not understand this. Is ICSI necessary for registration? I cannot understand, and it's from an anonymous attendee. And then there is Dr. Radhana Gupta, who says, how do we bring in uniformity in training of the embryologists?
So uniformity in training, it would be a little bit difficult because there is no single right way of doing IVF. So when we do not have that, it is very difficult. like techniques can be fine-tuned, techniques can be taught, but the practice actually would depend upon what actually works in your own laboratory. So, but otherwise, to a great extent, technically, I think good institutions can give them standard training.
Mm-hmm. So the other thing is, I think Dr. Banker would answer this. To improve clinicians' quality, can we have uniform protocols in NOVA with respect to AFC, AMH, and BMI?
I'll come to this, but I think this ICSI question, probably what she means is, do we need an ICSI machine to register? I think the answer is no. You could be doing only IVF and still you could register yourself. I don't think it is mandatory to be offering ICSI to become a level 2 clinic.
Okay.
But to come to this question, I think a lot of people have tried algorithms for stimulation protocols based on age, AMH, BMI. They work to a certain extent, but not more, because there are also so-called hyper-responders who, in spite of fulfilling all the criteria, do not respond well. So this can be used as a very baseline kind of protocol which should be adopted to everyone, but you also need to individualize, and the biggest variable here would be patient's response to treatment in the past. But this is the biggest variable. And so yes and no, we could have certain guidelines, but within those guidelines, you will have to always individualize.
Yes. I don't think I see any more questions. Are there any more questions?
No,
I think there are some people who are raising their hand. Maybe you can.
Raising the hand? I can't see any.
yeah, but everybody.
Naveen is raising the hand, that's all. No one else.
Someone
Okay.
called Jayashree Nikam.
I can't see anybody.
Naveen, can you see that?
So we can see raised hands, but everybody, you need to type the question.
So participants requested, if you have any questions, please do type in the Q&A session.
Q&A section.
And I do not see any questions over there.
As of now, yeah, I think all
Yeah.
the questions have been answered now, as of now.
So can we conclude then? Do you think we can?
Yes, doctor, yeah.
Thank you very much, all of you, for being here with us today. And thank you, NOVA, Team NOVA, for giving
Yes.
us opportunity for interacting with all. Thank you very much, Dr. Banker, Rohit, Lakshmi, and Sujatha. Thank you very much once again. I really enjoyed being here with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you all. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.